Hello, this is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the best recordings of Mahler's Symphony No. 2, The Resurrection. I know we've all been waiting for this one. There's something about this symphony. It's not Mahler's biggest, that's the 8th. It isn't really his longest, that's the 3rd. But in some ways, it has a special quality about it. I mean, it's the ultimate festival symphony, isn't it? It fills up a whole program by itself. It's the most uplifting and joyous, and the emotional progression from the darkness of the first movement to the spiritual transcendence of the last. It's really never been equaled by anybody. I really believe that. I don't think there's any other piece of music that can give you quite the same rush when it's over. I've played it several times too, and oh my God, it's more fun than you've ever had in your life. Believe me, it's just a thrill to perform, even as a tam-tamist. I mean, I played other things besides that too, but you get two of them, a high tam-tam and a low tam-tam. It's a tough piece to record, not just because the size of the orchestra is so large, but because there's so much detail in the score that it helps to bring out. But you can't be a micromanager about it. You always have to keep in mind the big picture and the architecture of the work. Now, Mahler himself had issues with the structure of the piece. He thought that the first movement was so different from the second that there needed to be a pause of 5 minutes between the two, as if that was going to help anything. It's totally pointless and a waste of time. And nowadays, we don't have an issue with Mahler's eclecticism the way Mahler's own audiences did. You know, we tend to forget that Mahler was very, very concerned with how his music would be received by the public. And he was always torn between the sort of absolutist position and insistence as an avant-garde creator in the complete integrity of his vision, and being kind to his listeners, knowing that they were never heard anything like it before, and they wanted to have some way to, enter the music and understand it. He wanted to be understood. So sometimes he felt a need to sugar the pill. And we have to be conscious of that when we perform him today, because today the second may be his most popular symphony. I mean, it used to be the 4th because it was shorter and kind of cute at the end, or the 1st, which gets played more often maybe. But you announce that Mahler's 2nd is on the program, and the tickets are gone like this. It happens to be the Mahler symphony I've probably seen most frequently. It's the one I saw Leonard Bernstein conduct most frequently. I mean, the one I remember most, it was just astonishing, was a performance in New York when Klaus Tennstedt had been scheduled to do, I believe it was Mahler 4th, and he canceled, as Klaus Tennstedt often did, for health reasons. And so at the last minute, instead of the Tennstedt programs, they substituted Bernstein doing Mahler 2. And everybody who had tickets was like, whoa, and people who didn't have tickets were desperate to get them. I had tickets to all 3 concerts. I went to all of them. I had bunches of them. I brought my friends. It was the most astonishing, fabulous series of concerts. And even Crystal Ludwig was around to do Urlicht. It was phenomenal. It was truly phenomenal. Now, the 2nd has been recorded successfully. Just a shocking number of times. It really has. And because the piece is so big and so various, it really allows a lot of different interpretive options. There are performances that are huge and grandiose, and performances that are a little bit, more, I would say, on the swift and lean side. And there is no one right way. There really isn't. There are only a few things that I really don't like about performances of the piece. One is to underplay the percussion and to underplay the brass. There's in the new critical edition, they suggest, because Mahler must have written down somewhere, that, the brass ensemble in Urlich should be sort of distanced and separate from the orchestra. You can do things like that, but for example, in Shai's recording, they're so far away, and the whole thing is bodiless. I found it very, very unconvincing. You have to be careful not to exaggerate the effects that Mahler wants, but also not to underplay, the climaxes and the special effects, of which this piece has a zillion of them. I mean, you've got offstage brass and onstage brass and 10 horns who are sort of running around at various times, and you've got the offstage brass band, and there's this passage in the finale where Mahler is, you know what it is. It's, the cellos are going do 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 do, and you've got trumpets and percussion off stage going dum ba da 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 dum ba da 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 da, right? And it's supposed to be a scarcely audible music being blown on the wind. And then for like the last 2 bars of that passage, Mahler marks, now the music has to become much louder, much more close to you. Well, how in God's name are you supposed to do that? I mean, you've been playing the whole time, and you've got like a bass drum and cymbals and triangle. You're like, crash, what are you going to do? Carry it from backstage all the way, almost not quite onto the stage, and then just start playing it louder? I mean, there are things that it asks that are really hard to do. I mean, the way to do it, of course, is that the players with portable instruments like the trumpets run closer, and you have to have extra percussion already set up and ready to go so everybody can run up. And most of the time, conductors don't bother trying to realize the effect. They really don't, because it's for 2 bars, and there's this huge crescendo going on everywhere else. It's that huge climax before the offstage brass cadenza. Then, of course, you do that, and everyone's got to get back off stage. Bernstein did it the best way in his concerts. His offstage brass just stayed off stage. They just hired the extra players, and they left them in the wings and wherever they were supposed to be, so that you didn't have the difficulties and the logistical issues of having players get up and move around and walk on and walk off and run on. And it really worked much better. Then there's the problem with the bells. The bells in the finale, which Mahler indicated should be Stahlstabe. Stahlstabe are steel bars, huge steel bars that you're supposed to beat. They're supposed to be a deep, clangy, bonging sound, and he was never able to realize the effect to his satisfaction. And most of the time, it doesn't come off too well in concert either. I don't know how you do it. Maybe, with some church bells dubbed in on a recording. Some recordings hit the bells better than others. Bernstein, had giant bells. They have a set of real church bells in New York Philharmonic, which they can use, that weigh about 5 billion pounds. You have to be careful the stage doesn't collapse when you use them. And he also had racks of tubular bells, regular tubular bells, which he had players just hit at random throughout the whole finale passage. I mean, there are all kinds of options. I saw Simon Rattle do a concert. Simon Rattle, which was not, in my view, it was with the Philadelphia Orchestra, I believe. It wasn't, in my view, terribly successful. And of course, he had a bass drum roll all the way through the finale because it was a Carnegie Hall concert. He didn't have organ pedals that were terribly satisfactory. I mean, so people play with this score quite a bit to try and realize Mahler's vision, particularly at the end. I mean, Leif Segerstam, in his recording done in Denmark, the Chandos cycle, which I thought was really rather dull till you got to the end, had the tam-tams play crescendos, that sort of thing. I mean, I could do it with this guy, but it would blow out your speakers and there's no point. And I asked him about it. I said, what do you do that for? You're just supposed to hit the thing. And he looked at me and he said, to make it louder. I didn't say, well, yeah, but the performance was boring up to that point, so louder doesn't help in the last 2 minutes when the rest of it's a snooze, right? And it isn't louder, actually. Louder is when you hit the damn thing the way you're supposed to hit it. Anyway, so these are all like just little issues that, as you know the piece, there are things that you listen for. I mean, there's a passage in the scherzo, the trumpets go do 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 do. I really want to hear that come out. It sounds wonderful. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't come out. It's so many spots, and they all sound different in different performances. So I'm going to talk about, I've got a dozen here, and we've already talked about 3 of them. We'll talk about some more along the way, and we'll see where we wind up, shall we? Now, any Mahler 2 discussion and collection of recordings has to start with the 2 guys who worked with Mahler, Otto Klemperer and Bruno Walter, both of whom made excellent recordings of the Second Symphony, and you have to have them and you have to hear them. Now, Bruno Walters, I think, is really quite wonderful for a couple of reasons. He had to make it in two separate sections, and so some people say, well, he made the recordings at, a distance, and that doesn't matter. The performance is wonderful. It's one of those Walter performances. It's generally on the quick side. It's rather effortless and flowing, and it doesn't have, that sort of crazy eruptive intensity that you get from like Bernstein, for example. But Walter never underplays anything. He doesn't underplay the climaxes. They're exciting as hell. And the finale, my God, it's a great finale. And I have never heard a performance that has the organ better balanced with the rest of the orchestra, even though it was recorded in like 59, 58, something like that. I don't know. It sounds fabulous at the very end. It's a great performance, and it's one that you really have to have. It seems like that may have been close to what Mahler himself did. Now, Klemperer on EMI Warner here is quite different. Klemperer, by the time he made it, was in his older age, and so he was doing things in more of a Klemperer-like way, shall we say. The first movement is very quick, shockingly quick, but the scherzo is like slow but very gnarly. It's wonderful because the woodwinds are really forward, as they always are with Klemperer, and the finale has just these moments. It has, the recording's a little cloudy. It's not fabulous, but it's good enough for sure. And the finale just has these moments where it has atmosphere and a brooding sort of gothic. I don't know how to describe it. It's just like nothing else. It really is. And so it's also a wonderful performance in its way. And you really ought to hear it, but it's quite different from Walter's. It's a lot quirkier than Walter's, and I think has a lot more of Klemperer's own personality in it. But those are the two that you kind of start with because they knew Mahler, they worked with Mahler, they had the style down, and what can you say? They were great conductors on top of it, so they weren't going to blow it, and they didn't. Another earlier recording that I've always come back to is the first Bernard Haitink. It's in this box here. There is something about the sound of the Concertgebouw in Mahler. It was a sound Mahler likely knew. It's absolutely wonderful. The playing, it's a very similar performance to Walter's in shape, but the playing with that orchestra, it's crisp and clean. And they had a couple old, I believe they were UFIP, that's Italian tam-tams. I used to know where they came from, guys. That the deep tam-tam is wonderful, and all of those quiet moments, you can hear it, and it adds tremendous atmosphere. Really phenomenal, beautiful recording and performance, and I listened to it with great pleasure. It's one of those, Haitink was the word is musical. It's music, they're all musical, but what I mean is his performances wear well, they hold up well, and this is one that really has. It's really terrific, and certainly Haitink never equaled it elsewhere, and maybe he sort of knew that because unlike some other Mahler symphonies, he hasn't run around making Mahler 2s every 5 minutes. It's so annoying the way people keep remaking and doing it worse, right? Now we have to talk about the Vienna Philharmonic. The Vienna Philharmonic has made a bunch of Mahler 2s. They did it with Gilbert Kaplan. They did it with Boulez. They did it with Mazel. And Mazel's on Sony is a sleeper. That's worth hearing. It's really quite a good performance, that Sony performance in the Mazel cycle. And if the only thing I would say about it is that he's a bit of a letdown in the final chorus. He conducts it rather quickly and seems to be in a rush to get it over with. But it's one heck of a good performance otherwise. But if you want the Vienna Philharmonic in Mahler 2, the one you have to have is the old Zubin-Mehta on Decca. It's still the best one. It has a glorious finale, and it also has the younger Christa Ludwig singing Urlicht and Ilyana Kotrubash in doing the soprano solos. It's really a beautiful performance, exciting, well recorded, and it sounds like the Vienna Philharmonic. So that's the one to get if you want Vienna. Now, Mehta also did an excellent recording of Mahler 2 with the Israel Philharmonic on Teldec. It was a recording that nobody ever paid attention to, but it's really exciting, very well recorded, very well played. It's terrific. It's absolutely terrific. If you get it, enjoy it. It's one of the more, I mean, it's one of those, I can put it on and just listen to it, and it's fun. It's a fun Mahler too. I don't know if it's the most probing or spiritual, whatever that means, but it's one hell of an exciting performance. Another one that I think was wonderful, that we talked about a little bit already when we talked about the Tellark Mahler box, was Yoel Levi in Atlanta. Now, Tellark has two great Mahler twos. You've got Slatkin, which has vanished off the face of the earth, which was one of those performances, as I mentioned, that he told me that everything just went right, and it did, and he's not a Mahler conductor, and he doesn't particularly care for Mahler, but that was a great Mahler two. And then there's Levi with Atlanta, which is stunningly played and recorded, fabulously well done, brilliantly shaped and structured from beginning to end. It's marvelous. It's absolutely marvelous. And I mean, you can't go wrong. And there are a lot of performances like that now, because the Mahler 2 has become one of those works that has entered the repertoire. Orchestras know it, conductors know it, and they kind of just know how to do it. And it's another one of those pieces. It's so big. I mean, you have to be really like a moron to blow it. You have to be deliberately bad. It has so many opportunities to be great. And if you just let play the music as the way it's written and let Mahler's genius kind of shine forth, it's going to come off. I mean, one way or another. That's not to denigrate people like Slatkin and Levi, who are brilliant conductors and who did wonderful, wonderful work in this piece. But what I'm saying is that we now have what you might call a common practice in Mahler 2 almost. The parameters of a good Mahler 2 interpretation are well known, and they aren't difficult to master. It's you keep the thing going and nail the climaxes, and you have whatever opportunities you want to bring personal touches to sort of the quieter bits and some of those other things, and you're in business, And so, the performances that I dislike are generally the ones where the conductors are actively getting in the way of what the music wants to do, which conductors do very often, I might add. Another great Mahler 2, and here's one that never gets mentioned, and I really wish it would be, because it was the high point of a cycle, in my view, Tennstedt. Tennstedt was an inspirational conductor. He could be great or just awful on any given day. You never knew what was going to happen, but when he made this Mahler 2 with the LPO, he was in tip-top form, and it's a wonderful Mahler 2. It is exciting. It is brilliantly played. I mean, for Tennstedt particularly, because, again, he was, sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. It was a little bit like Furtwängler in that respect. And it's exciting, and I think it has that incandescence in the finale, particularly, that you just look for, that you want to hear. You want to hear the music just reach for the heavens at the end, and it does in Tennstedt's recording. It really does. It's one of the best things he ever did. And it was also, given the fact that it was an early EMI digital and you never knew what you were going to get from them. Some of those, in this cycle, I mean, the fourth sounded terrible. Some of them just sounded awful. And it was one of the best recordings that they made with him in his Mahler cycle as well. So I would go for Tennstedt's Mahler 2 in a heartbeat. It's absolutely wonderful. Now we have to talk about Leonard Bernstein, who we all also mentioned. The best one to get is his last one on Deutsche Grammophon. It's the best sounding, it's the best played, it's the one that most realizes his vision, which is, it's a festival vision of Mahler 2. It's big, it's bold, it's deliberate, it's cosmic. Some people may think it's exaggerated. I don't think so. Bernstein recorded it 3 times. The first one with the New York Philharmonic is also excellent. It was in his first Mahler cycle. It was at the same time as he did that amazing third. The only issue is that the sonics aren't great, and the cymbals particularly are like off mic for some reason. I don't know why that happened, which is kind of annoying at the climaxes, but it's a very exciting Mahler 2. It's early Bernstein, if you want to call it that. Then he did one with the London Symphony Orchestra live that was also from Ely Cathedral, that was issued on Sony. That's the worst of the ones. It's the most sonically limited. They turned it into a video. The video was awful. Oh my God. It was like spotlit on individual instruments one at a time. Whenever the offstage brass played, I remember you saw like a stained glass window or something. I mean, it was stupid. The video was awful. And like I said, the sonics were indifferent. I wish that it had been better recorded, but everything went right in these Deutsche Grammophon Mahler 2 recordings. It's very, very exciting. And you know what I also like about these performances as a percussionist, I have to tell you? I like the fact that the New York Philharmonic plays from the old parts, not from the critical edition, because at that huge climax, the huge climax before the offstage cadenza, you know, when the opening and the finale comes back, you know, da 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 dum da 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 dum bum 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 ba bum ba bum ba da 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 crash pow, you know, all hell breaks loose. You know what I mean, right? In the original score and in the parts the New York Philharmonic has, the tam-tam part is marked fortissimo throughout. Da 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 crash, 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 crash. And that's how they play it. That's how Bruno Walter played it. And that's the way it's supposed to be done. In the revised critical edition, the tam-tam is marked fortissimo initially and then piano with accents. Well, what the heck does that mean? I understand the point. The point is you do not want the instrument to overwhelm the rest of the orchestra. But you got to hear it. I mean, it's a total crazy, insane fortissimo. It's supposed to go bash, pow, pow, pow. Sometimes the instrument just goes whoosh, you know, because of, you know, the way tam-tams, when you let them reverberate, you know, they just build and build. Some way you got to do it. But I am absolutely convinced that piano, Mahler may have marked it down, may have come from him, but it's contrary to the intent of the music. That passage should be as violent as human beings can make it from everyone, and I won't settle for anything less. Okay? So now you know. There's a little trivial tam-tam detail about Mahler too. All right, now I have here 4 or 5 more performances. It's unbelievable, guys, isn't it? That I think are really spectacular and that are absolutely worth having. Michael Gielen. This is a terrific Mahler too. This is in his Mahler cycle that was originally on Hensler, that's now on SWR, that's now on the Michael Gielen edition that you still might be able to get separately. You know, Gielen, as we talked about, he's not afraid of making an ugly sound. He's wonderful at all of those dark, creepy moments in the first movement. It's not the best played recording, and it's not necessarily, you know, the most tightly held together, but it's a very effective performance. You know, Gielen could kind of wimp out at big climaxes sometimes because he did not have a personal belief in the value of happy endings, but this one he nails. He does it really, really well. And again, there's something about this symphony. It captures the imagination. It sets you alight. It makes you want to surpass yourself. And all of these performances that I think I'm recommending have that quality one way or another. You know, however conductors choose to do it. And at this point, in this performance, Gielen was able to successfully realize Mahler's vision, and I was very proud of him for doing that because I wasn't expecting it. I really wasn't. Now I have some sleepers. I have 3 sleepers, and 1 final recommendation. So let's get through them. Sleeper number 1, Andrew Litton. Andrew Litton did for Delos in Dallas the 2nd and 3rd. I mean, he did more than that, but the 2nd and 3rd particularly, these are the ones that I like. Fantastic. First-rate playing. It's very similar in its way to Levy and Atlanta, but he's a little bit more emotionally, shall we say, generous than Levy is in the big moments. And the playing is terrific. And the sonics, they're a little low level at first, but if you've got a good system and you can crank it up, this one is gonna blow you away. It's a wonderful, wonderful performance. A little bit maybe in the style of Bernstein too. I mean, Litton is a terrific conductor. He really is. He's another wonderful conductor who hasn't always gotten the attention he's deserved. I think maybe because His recordings largely focused on late Romantic repertoire that lots of people did and did well. But his Mahler 2 and his Mahler 3, we'll talk about that one too in that talk, are absolutely first rate. And it deserves your consideration if you can find it. It's worth hearing. Next, this one was very, 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 very enjoyable, and I was very happy to hear it. Ozawa. This is a Sony recording with the Saito Kinen Orchestra that he made in Japan with a Japanese choir. It's fabulous. Fabulous. Now, Ozawa, of course, also did one on Phillips with the Boston Symphony. That was a very lean, somewhat clean, maybe a bit underplayed performance. I like his Mahler cycle. I really do. I love hearing the Boston Symphony play that music. And I think Ozawa generally gets short shrift from everybody because of biography, because we hear the story about how he and the orchestra hated each other when he started to go and he made too many recordings. And he did. Let's face it. He did. Was he the most compelling, emotionally giving conductor in the universe? No, he wasn't. But he made a lot of great records. And he often made some great. I saw him do some Mahler. It was pretty terrific sometimes. He could really hit it. And here, the sense of occasion again. You get the sense that it matters, that everyone is giving 100%, that it's that kind of a performance. And that's what you want to hear. It's wonderfully well recorded. I don't know if you can still find it, but if you can get this one, this is one of the great Mahler 2s, folks. I have no doubt about it. It's sensational. And it deserves a place in your collection if you're a Mahler 2 person. It really does. You'll be very, very happy that you heard it. That's that one. Next, the third sleeper. This was the one that really blew me away. Blomstedt in San Francisco. Another performance that got no attention. Blomstedt, of course, is not a big Mahlerian. This was the only Mahler symphony he recorded in San Francisco. It's spectacular. It's got all of Blomstedt's traditional virtues. It has wonderful playing. It's that musicality. What do we mean when we say musicality? I think what we really mean is it has that human warmth, the cantabile, the singing quality, the naturalness, the organic flow, all of those qualities. And it was fabulously well recorded with a great organ at the ending. The finale is spectacular, absolutely spectacular. I mean, you got to hear the ending. It's wonderful. I don't know why people don't talk about this performance. I truly don't. It's as great a Mahler 2 as anyone ever did. It truly is. So you can get it. It's available. It's available on like one disc now, I think. It's been reissued in various ways. It's out there. Find it. Listen to it. You will love it. Blomstedt was such a great conductor. You wish he'd done more Mahler. It's like, damn it. He did do a ninth recently that was released just recently, actually. I think it was with the Gewandhaus or with Bamberg. Maybe Bamberg, one of those German orchestras he's hanging around with now. It was not great. It was good. It had a lot of the same qualities here, but this is so much better. I mean, this is just so much better. He was younger. He was fresher. He was up for the occasion. He clearly believed in the work, and he just delivers a knockout performance. It's a singleton release, but go for it, folks. Go for it. However, got to pick one, don't we? And I'm going to pick one, and because of all of this abundance that we've seen in this most giving of symphonies, the however choice is not necessarily, demonstrably superior to all the others. It's not like when we were talking about Bado's Honegger cycle, where it's so much better than everyone else's that it's in a different league. This is not in a different league, but it is superb in every way and special, and it deserves a special place in your Mahler 2 collection, which is getting larger and larger by the minute, isn't it? There you go. Ivan Fischer with the Budapest Festival Orchestra. Maybe not the one you would have thought, huh? I think this performance just gets just about everything right. It has grandeur, but it's impulsive where it needs to be impulsive. It has an orchestra full of character and personality that can characterize the music. It's magnificently well recorded by Channel Classics. It has everything going for it. A wonderful modern recording of Mahler too. And, if you know me, you know I'm not sentimental. I don't care about historical recordings unless they're historical. I mean, historical in a history-making sense. But from a musical point of view, I think there's practically nothing from the past that hasn't been superseded in the present. And here's an example of that, because there's still great music making happening. Now, Fischer he's doing a Mahler cycle. And it's had its ups and downs, like all Mahler cycles. If you ask me when we're going to do a Mahler cycle video, we aren't, because there is no Mahler cycle that I think captures everything in the music that you can recommend unambiguously, aside from perhaps, the most consistent type, like Bertini's. You could stack up all your Mahler cycles and go through them, but everything has its pluses and minuses. And those pluses and minuses are wide. They're wide gaps usually. I mean, I'm telling you now, the most consistent Mahler cycle is Bertini's. It has a very good Mahler 2 in it as well. But it's not a singleton Mahler 2, that I would recommend to take out and show your friends and bring home to your mother, to let her know that you've managed to find your Mahler 2 for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? But Fischer's Mahler 2 is one of those. You can take it home to your mother. It's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. And I recommend it as highly as I possibly can. And it's also wonderful that it's on a good independent label like Channel Classics, that deserves support. Now, I just need to tell you a little story to end it with, this talk with. I imprinted, we always talk about the performance we imprinted on it. We have sentimental affection for it. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, right? I imprinted on the Reiner Haydn 88. I don't have any sentimental affection for that. I don't think it's very interesting. I imprinted on the Stokowski, which I got when it was a new release back in what was it, 1975 or something like that. I don't know. The piece just blew me away. But then I heard Bernstein, I heard some other Mahler recordings, and I realized that the Stokowski Mahler 2 was the Stokowski Mahler 2. It wasn't Mahler's Mahler 2. It has amazing moments. Oh, the horns at the end, and some of the things he does are just terrific, but some of the things he does are just perverse. And so, do I have a sentimental affection for the Stokowski Mahler 2? Well, maybe yes, but it's not one I would recommend. I'm sorry, folks. I have to mention it and just tell you that, because I'm always listening for that next great recording, and I hope you are too. It's just another reason to keep on listening. And now they're vacuuming out in the hallway, and so it's time for me to sign off. Thank you so much for listening to this video. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. We have so much more to talk about. Take care.